This is Grace Notes. I'm Alan Button, and pleased to have as our guest today Ken Powell. Ken is a 1969 graduate of the NC State Agricultural Institute, husband of Wanda, father of 2 daughters with a couple of great sons-in-law and 12 grandchildren.
Yeah.
Welcome, Ken.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Ken, we were talking before we came into the studio about a number of things, and I guess we're going to be challenged fitting in everything that we could talk about, so we're going to need to be a little bit selective, but that's okay.
Okay.
Let me have you start off, if you would, by giving us a little bit about your background, where you're from, and tell us about your growing up.
Okay. Grew up in Nash County on a tobacco farm out in the Coopers community, a Macedonia community, and the Coopers Township, Macedonia community. Went to Cooper School, graduated from there in 1967, and then, as you said, I graduated from the North Carolina State University Agricultural Institute in 1969. My wife and I met while we were in college. Her father was pastor of our church for a couple of years while we were in college, and that's how we met. And we got married in 1970.
Which makes it about 51 years now.
51 years. It's hard to believe as you look back that we have been married that long. In some aspects, it seems like yesterday.
Uh-huh.
And in others, it seems like it has been a lifetime almost. But in retrospect, life goes by so fast. It's like a vapor, as the Bible says.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, and we'll come back to that, because I know one of the songs that you've selected ties right into that theme. Tell us a little bit more about your farming growing up.
Yes. As I said, I was raised on a tobacco farm. I got involved in 4-H at an early age and had 4-H projects. And then as I got into high school and first year of college, I rented a little farm. That's actually where we live today. And I had 2.5 acres tobacco, and then I raised about 5 acres of cucumbers. And that helped to pay for my college education at State. Of course, it didn't cost anyways as much then to go to school as it does now, but farming paid for my college education.
You are the youngest of 3 children?
That's correct.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So you had an older brother and sister to give you a little bit of guidance?
Yes, I'm very fortunate. My oldest brother, he retired from what was then Carolina Power and Light, and he was very active in NC State. After he graduated, he was president of the Alumni Association for a while. My sister, and he's over 10 years older than I am. My sister's 8 years older than I am, and she was married to Dr. Marvin Joyner that y'all had on this program a few years ago. And he was president of Central Carolina Community College for a number of years. And so I've had 2 great siblings to kind of inspire and help me stay on the straight and narrow over these years.
You told me earlier that there were only 2 things you ever really wanted to do.
Yeah.
Tell us, farming was one of them.
Yep.
And the other was?
Farm Bureau. Back about 1980, I was active at that time on the board in Nash County, Farm Bureau board in Nash County, had been involved with the Young Farmer and Rancher program. And around 1980, I decided if I ever did anything other than farm, I wanted to work with North Carolina Farm Bureau, because I learned over the period of time just how important Farm Bureau was to farmers, and that it was the largest farm organization in the country. North Carolina has the second largest farm bureau in the country, and it is a large farm policy lobbying organization. It lobbies to help farmers in North Carolina and in Washington.
A nonpartisan operation.
Nonpartisan, non-sectarian.
What did you do with Farm Bureau?
I started out in December of 1985 as a district field representative. I had 12 counties from Wilson County down to the coast. And it gave me a good opportunity to visit with farmers in the 12 counties in my district. And each county in North Carolina has a board of directors that is constituted of people with farm backgrounds that realize income from production agriculture. And so I had the opportunity to work with them, and it gave me a lot better understanding of agriculture in North Carolina, really.
And at some point, as I understand it, you were promoted to a position that had you visiting counties across the state.
Yes. In 1996, I was promoted to Director of Field Services, and by virtue of that, I supervised the field staff across North Carolina. And by virtue of that job, I got to visit every county farm bureau in North Carolina, and we have an office in every county. Matter of fact, we have multiple offices in some counties.
Well, your familiarity with everything North Carolina, of course, ties into this first song that you've selected, "Carolina in My Mind" by James Taylor.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
Oh, it's I've traveled from one end of this state to the other multiple times, and we have a beautiful state. Some of the prettiest little towns and communities all across this state. And so whenever I think of James Taylor's song, "Carolina on My Mind," it just brings back a lot of pleasant memories of the times I spent behind the wheel, either during the day or late at night in this beautiful state.
Well, we'll hear the song, and when we come back, I'd like to hear more, Ken, about some of the volunteer work that you've been involved in since you've retired.
Okay.
Let's go to the song, "Carolina in My Mind" by James Taylor.
In my mind, I'm gone to Carolina. Can't you see the sunshine? Gone, I'm gone. I'm gone. Say nice things about me, 'cause I'm gone.
That was "Carolina in My Mind" by James Taylor. If you're just joining us, our guest today is Ken Powell. A number of things that we could say about Ken, but in terms of relevance to his farming background, he's the former Director of Field Services in North Carolina for Farm Bureau. And Ken, I understand that had something to do with a hobby that you and your wife have gotten into and that you now are involved educating others on.
Oh, yes.
Beekeeping.
That's right.
Tell us about it. How'd you get into it?
Well, Wanda's daddy kept bees for a number of years, and she got after me after he passed away in 1993 to get into beekeeping, and I was very reluctant. But in 2003, Wanda's little Cocker Spaniel died, and she was kind of going through a tough time there, and I was going to Moultrie, Georgia, to the Sunbelt Expo Farm of the Year program. And while there, we went through a large exhibit from Rossman Apiaries in Georgia. And Wanda asked me again, couldn't we get into beekeeping? And so I submitted, I gave in and said, yes, we'll get some bees. And so we got our first 2 hives in the spring of 2004. And so we've been beekeeping ever since.
And by the way, the name of your Cocker Spaniel was what?
Honey.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. She was honey number 1. I was honey number 2.
What do you do? You're now connected with a beekeeper association?
Yes.
Have I got that right?
Coastal Plain Beekeepers Association, and I also chair the Nash County Farm Bureau Honey and Beekeeping Committee. And Nash County Farm Bureau each year for, I reckon, the last 7 years or so has awarded a grant to a beginner beekeeper to help them get started. And the Coastal Plain Beekeeper awards one also.
I understand that you and Wanda, to some degree, have found yourselves in positions of educating and sort of mentoring others with respect to beekeeping. Have I got that
Yes.
right?
Beekeeping is such a fascinating hobby for us, but the bees are so fascinating themselves. And we go to schools, we have been to schools, we have been to church.
Uh-huh.
But yes, we've been around to several different places and talked about beekeeping. The Heritage Days through 4-H, we have been doing that for several years now, speaking to the students as they come through about beekeeping. And they are just in awe, as are the teachers, when they learn about how important bees are and what they do.
Well, I was about to ask you, we can't get into full-blown education about bees and their importance, but maybe you could comment just for a minute or so
Sure.
on that.
Bees contribute about 1/3 of, they say every third mouthful that we eat is due to the pollination by honeybees and other pollinators.
Uh-huh.
And so they are important that way. And the honey that they produce is really the only food source that is made by insects for human consumption. And it is just amazing. We don't really contemplate how much work bees do to produce a teaspoon of honey. It takes 12 bees to make 1 teaspoon of honey. And they have to visit about 2 million plants or 2 million times plants to produce 1 pound of honey. But it is really something. Once they put the honey, they turn the nectar into honey, and once they get the water content down to about 16 to 18% by fanning it, then they will make wax with their bodies and seal the honey over, seal those cells over, and they make those cells themselves. Everything's got to be done in the dark. There's no light in that hive. And so the cells are perfect hexagon. And they put that honey in those cells, and then they fan the honey, get the moisture out. They seal it over with wax. Once they do that, it will keep for pretty much forever. They have actually found honey in tombs in Egypt, 4,000 years old, that was still edible.
Amazing.
It is fascinating. Yeah.
What are the issues that honeybees face?
I'd say since the mid-'80s, the varroa mite, which looks kind of like a little tick, and they get on the bees, and they get on the larvae, and they suck the lifeblood really out of the bees and the larvae, and they cause disease. And that has been the #1 issue with honeybees since probably the mid-'80s. They have decimated the wild bee population. We probably got less than 10% of the wild bee population that we had prior to 1980.
Let me have us shift gears here, Ken.
Okay.
You told me earlier that you served in the Army Reserves for 6 years, I think you said?
Yes, that's right.
And that, I gather, has had some influence on your interest in the local American Legion post, or at least you are involved with that. Tell us about it.
Yes. Yes, I served from 1969 through December of 1975 in the Army Reserves, and I was fortunate enough that I never got called into active duty. And when I was working, I really didn't have time to get involved with a lot of other organizations, but when I retired, I wanted to give back, and so I got involved with American Legion Post 110 in Nashville. They have a ceremony each Memorial Day out at the cemetery there in Nashville, and my wife and I went out and we saw all the veterans' graves decorated with flags, and I thought, man, that is really neat. And I have 2 uncles buried out there that both served in World War II. And so I decided I wanted to be a part of the organization. I've been approached by Danny Tyson and James Irvin, were active in the post, and asked me to join, and so I did. And then after 2 or 3 years, they made me adjutant which is civilian terms of secretary. And so I'm now the adjutant for Post 110 in Nashville. Great group of individuals. The American Legion is the largest lobbying organization for veterans in the country.
And your role as adjutant, you haven't really elaborated on it, but as I understand it, that basically is or could be a full-time job.
It could be.
There's a lot that you keep track of.
It's a lot that you could, if you had the time, you could really make a full-time job out of it. But, I feel good to be able to give back a little bit for those veterans that have served us so well over the years that actually did have to go into combat.
Let me ask you this, Ken. I know you're involved also with the Cooper's Ruritan Club.
Mm-hmm.
Is your wife connected with that in
Yes.
some fashion?
Wanda and I both are members of Cooper's Ruritan Club. Jane Tyson, that's been on this program before, she and her husband, Danny, they encouraged us once we retired to get involved, and we have. That's a good local civic organization. It gives back to the community through scholarships and other different forms, and so we have been happy to be members of the Ruritan Club now, I think since 2013. And matter of fact, we got a fundraiser coming up this month, next Friday, May the 7th, out at the Cooper's Community Building.
And as I understand it, you've got a grand opening here planned for the middle part of May.
Yes, I'm also on the board for the Cooper's Community Development Corporation. And Harold Winstead has worked so vigorously for over 10 years now to get a miracle park in the Cooper's community. And we will have the grand opening for that Saturday, May the 15th at 11 o'clock. I would encourage anybody that can to come out and see it. It is a beautiful park.
We'll take that as an invitation.
Yes, sir. Please do.
Tell us about this next song, Ken. Annie's song. I know it has something to do with Wanda.
Yes. Annie's song is just a beautiful love song. John Denver wrote it for his first wife, Annie. And so...
And you're going to send it out to your first wife.
There you go.
First wife now of 51 years.
51 years. That's exactly right. And but it's just a beautiful love song. And you love each other all the time. You like each other most of the time. You don't always like each other. There are times when you kind of get on each other's nerves, but through it all, you cherish the love that you have between you. And with each year, that love gets stronger. So, yeah, Annie's song is just a beautiful love song.
Great perspective, Ken. So we'll send this one out in a special way to Wanda. It's clear that you two are partners in so much, both pre-retirement and post-retirement.
Yep.
Let's hear it. Annie's Song by John Denver.
You fill up my senses like a night in a forest.
That was Annie's Song by John Denver. Ken, you've told us about your work with and through the Beekeepers Association and the American Legion, Cooper's Ruritan Club. I know you're a deacon at your church, too, and between that and what your wife is involved with, speaking of your wife, by the way, I understand that she's retired, but tutoring, have I got that right?
Yeah, she's currently tutoring first grade class, I believe it is, over at Williford Elementary School for reading. She loves teaching children. Sure does.
Well, speaking of all the things that you're involved with and what your wife is involved with, it strikes me that you have not really retired. You've just changed positions.
That's right. The fellow that hired me for Farm Bureau. His name was Billy Upchurch, and when he retired, he told me one day, he said, I might wear out, but I'm not going to rust out. And so I have adopted Billy's philosophy is I might wear out, but I don't plan to rust out.
Great counsel there, great perspective. You've identified another song for us that maybe you could lead into in whatever way you think appropriate, but I take it as kind of an advice song, this Ronnie Millsap song, Let's Take the Long Way Around the World. Why that song?
Well, you know, Wanda and I have been married over 51 years now, and when you look back, when you're young, you're trying so hard to be successful at whatever you're doing, and then after you have children, trying to provide for their needs and also some of their wants. So you really get caught up in work and all those activities associated with work and then the family, and you really don't take the time to smell the roses a lot of times. You just, you're so caught up in life itself. And then when you retire and you look back and you wonder, where in the world did time go? And you think then, you know, we really need to take the time to enjoy life while we're living it, while we're still young and healthy, and to take time to smell the roses and enjoy life. Take the slow way around the world and not be in such a hurry. And it seems like to me, the older I get and the more in a hurry people are today. They're just here, yonder, and everywhere. And so I think we need to, take the slow way around the world.
You told me that this was a song actually that you and Wanda had selected for your 50th anniversary celebration that was scheduled for last March 20th, but it didn't happen because of the pandemic.
Absolutely. We had planned a big anniversary celebration and had about over 100 people invited, had a caterer lined up, and then the pandemic hit. And so we have yet to have that celebration. We had a DVD done, and this was one of the songs on the DVD. And so it means a lot to us.
We'll put a plug in for another song that you actually had talked about too, Alan Jackson's Remember When.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful song, and it brings back a lot of memories. Yeah, a lot of good memories.
Let me have you wrap up, Ken, in whatever way you think appropriate.
Okay.
I certainly appreciate what you've already said in the way of counsel and perspective. So the mic is yours.
I certainly appreciate the opportunity to come today. And one of the programs that I worked with North Carolina Farm Bureau was a leadership development program. In that, one of the things that we try to do with our farmers that come through the program is develop leadership skills. And one of the motivational speakers that we would listen to, that to me is the best motivational speaker I've ever heard, was Coach Lou Holtz. And he has a video. I would encourage anybody, if they got the opportunity to see it, it's called Do Right. And he has a simple philosophy about life. Do what's right, do the best you can, and treat others like you want to be treated. Do what's right, can I trust you? Are you honest? Do the best you can, are you committed to excellence? Or will you settle for mediocrity? And the last one, which is basically the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Do you love me? Do you care about me as a person? And even though I can't say that I've always done that, it is certainly a goal that I feel like I should try to attain and live by.
Well, Ken, that is great counsel. And I think if Lou Holtz were looking for a role model, he could look to Ken Powell.
Thank you.
Appreciate your being here, Ken. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Let's hear that Ronnie Millsap song. Let's take the long way around the world.
In the daily rush of things, if we stop to think, it seems we never have